So moving on in storage types, another key concept is replication and data mobility, and that can be really about maintaining multiple copies of the data and also keeping consistency across them. Now I know, probably quick show of hands, how many people you're probably saying already on premises alone, this is already a very thorny problem, right? In terms of heterogeneous data management across different estates, even before the cloud ever entered into the picture, this was already a really huge problem. And now you have protocol issues in terms of, again, how do I get from a POSIX storage protocol to REST? And then now, how do I get from on-premises into the cloud, right? So this is a problem that doesn't go away, but if anything has become more acute. And then all the canonical use cases still remain, right? I might use this, or I might have replication as part of a backup and sort of data protection scheme, and that's versioning, or DR for availability. It could be a part of a migration, and that can be one time, or it can be potentially infrequent, right? Like again, I'm moving from sort of on-premises as Todd just did to a golden copy in the cloud, or I'm starting to create a hybrid scenario, or in some cases I'm doing both, right? There's the need for the format and the protocol translation, but another key element, hopefully you've seen alluded to, is workflow enablement, and it's how do I bring my data close to the cloud resources that I want to apply against them, right? So you could say, wow, those cognitive services, image recognition, transcription, that's fantastic, but the point of origin or the main repository for my data is on premises, and oh, by the way, it's in a file share, so how do I get from here to there, right? And how do I bridge that gap? And so this is a space that we're definitely seeing a lot of innovation, and I think one key trend that's really helpful to this is the notion, of an increased embracing of data transparency, right? Because in the past, when the data lands, it's in a proprietary format. And that's frequently by necessity because that's how a lot of really cool differentiated features are implemented. But if the data arrives in its destination in the cloud in an open and transparent or readily readable format, so that you can actually apply all of those services against that, wouldn't that be a really fantastic thing? And that to us is a very sort of key next step in this maturity curve that I spoke of. And so to that end, I would like to invite my next guest speaker up to the stage, Duane Laflotte from Peer Software. So Duane. Yeah, thank you. Give you the clicker. I'll let you switch over.
Hopefully the switch over smooth. There we go. Great. Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. So how many of you went to the keynote on Monday? Okay, so a lot of you. Great. So at the keynote, we saw a lot of really cool stuff, right? We saw how cognitive services, and we saw how Azure has AI that can do all sorts of wonderful things once data makes it in the cloud, right? So if data is born in the cloud, that's great. But all of you probably have infrastructure today that has unstructured data that's sitting on existing environments, right? Windows servers, NetApp filers, EMC devices. So your challenge here is, how do I then take this data that exists today in my environment, this unstructured file data, how do I then translate that up into the cloud, be able to use the power of Azure and cognitive services and the ability to use blob and replication up in the cloud, while still allowing my users and applications to use the data where it exists today. Now, I'd like to tell you that Peer, a little bit about Peer, if anybody understands unstructured data in a pretty intimate way, that would be Peer. So we've been in this market for a very long time, 24 years and counting. All we do day in and day out is help customers understand unstructured data, make sure that it's highly available, and that they have the ability to use it in the way that they want to. We have offices all around the world, so we've been helping customers for a very long time, like I said, over 2 decades here, with replicating and understanding unstructured data. So classically, what you'll see here is our classic products, or our PeerGFS. What's PeerGFS do? So today, PeerGFS gives customers the ability to make sure that they have a highly available transactional file system, if you will, that spreads across the company's environment, no matter how many branch offices you have, no matter where you are in the globe. So if I have NetApp filers in certain locations, you'll see in this slide here, I have a VNX sitting in Sydney, I have a NetApp in Hong Kong, I have Windows servers. Maybe what I want to do is make sure that as users use this data, it's available to them, it's locked so that users aren't overwriting changes, and it's replicated around so that it's quick for the user to access. Now, the great translation to this is PeerGFS also has the ability then to translate this data directly up into the cloud. Now, you'll see here there's several different cloud terminologies that we reference. We obviously have the ability to integrate with things like Store Simple, where we can integrate and replicate data up into Store Simple so you can leverage all of the power of replication up into the cloud through that. But then we also have the ability to do things like infrastructure in the cloud, where you might have a Windows VM that's running in the cloud where users will then have data that may be up there, and you could redirect them up into the cloud if a particular server at a particular site went down. So high availability for this data. But one of the great things about giving the ability to translate this data automatically in Azure in real time is we also give you the ability to engage cognitive services and AI services up in Azure. And I'm gonna unpackage that a little bit more, because this last bullet point here, full-featured analytics-ready file-to-object. What does that mean exactly? So let's take a look at this. So here in this next slide, you'll see I have an environment down here, NetApp Filer, a Windows Server, etc. And what we're doing is in real time, because PeerGFS is just software, so we're sitting and watching in real time what's going on these storage devices. As we see those files change, get created, deleted, etc., in real time, we're replicating those changes up into Azure. And we're replicating file to blob. So directly, as the file exists on site, it gets replicated directly up into blob, and that gives you the ability to then use all of the different paradigms that Azure affords you for blob. So one of the things you'll see here is I can set retention periods. I can say how long I want these objects, how many copies of these objects I want, etc. All of the normal stuff that you can do with blob, you now have the ability to do with your unstructured data in a real-time way. Now, one of the other interesting things that Andrew had talked about is the ability to replicate only the bytes that change. Now, this is something no other cloud does. No other cloud gives you the ability to say, you know what, you have a 1 gig object, replicate it up, you're gonna pay for 1 gig. But you know what, you make a small change, let's say you change 200K of it. I wanna just replicate that 200K. Nope, you need to replicate the whole 1 gig object again and pay for it again. Not with Azure. We have the ability just to replicate the bytes that change, making it very, very efficient to leverage Azure and restore data and have the ability to use all of the cognitive services that Azure affords you. So you'll see at the top here, we also have the ability, now that these are pure blobs, now that these are objects that exist in the cloud natively, I have the ability to engage machine learning, artificial intelligence, as well as cognitive services. How many of you are using cognitive services today? Awesome. So a couple of you are. Good. So cognitive services, for the rest of you who haven't been using cognitive services, you'll dig into a lot of the functionality. I think you'll see the text on the top of the screen here. A lot of different things that Azure can do in real time in understanding voice to text, understanding facial recognition, etc., are tied into a lot of the cognitive services. So with PeerGFS, we have the ability to set up a policy that can enact in real time, right? So like I said, can watch as data changes and replicate it directly up into Azure Blob, or has the ability even to store and forward. One of the interesting things about this product is it doesn't just scan like most other products would and then chunk all the data up to Azure. We are watching in real time, so there's no need for us to scan the estate. So a lot of people are missing what they call backup windows, etc., because what happens is the scans take too long. Well, in this case, you don't need to worry about that. We're going to watch in real time what's going on, and when a window opens up that you're allowing us to push the data to Azure, we'll push only the bytes that change to Azure. So how many of you have heard of GDPR? The General Data Protection Regulation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, couple of you? Okay. Okay, and this is other than walking around the halls, this is the exercise for the day, is your arms up and down. So question for you, how many of you are EU companies? Okay, how many of you deal with citizens of the EU? Okay, so a majority of you. What you'll find is GDPR, when it's enacted, which is in roughly 200, 300 days from now, is global. What this regulation does is it makes it so that any organization that is dealing with an EU company, is an EU company, or deals with a citizen of the EU, whether they're in the country or not, you have to conform to these regulations. So, okay, let's take one of the regulations. One of the regulations is the right to erasure, which sounds pretty ominous, right? We have the right to erase people. But really what it is the right to be forgotten. What that means is any person can come to you and say, I would like you to remove me from your digital footprint. How would you guys do that today? How would you go back through all of your files, all of your backups, all of your tapes, all of your documents, find this user, remove them, and then what, re-archive the data? So it's a pretty ominous task. What you're gonna find is if you have the ability to leverage pushing this data up into Azure, this becomes as simple as a click. I can leverage things like Azure Search to find all of the data that relates to that user and remove it. Let's do a quick demo. All right. So in the background here, what you'll notice is I have my PeerGFS main window up and running. And the reason I have it up and running is just so you can see what's going on in the background. I won't belabor going through all of the settings here. But in real time, what I'm doing is I'm watching a Windows server where there's a share, where we're in an event. Let's say we're here at Ignite. And there's a bunch of pictures getting taken. And what I want to do is I want to look for leveraging Microsoft's facial recognition up in Azure. I want to look for a shady character. We're really concerned with, maybe it's this FBI wanted person, right? So right here, we're going to find this person right here. Very shady, but we need to find him. So if there's any pictures of this guy, we need to make sure that as they're uploaded, as they're backed up to the server, in real time, those photos are being processed up in the cloud. So let's see how we would do that. So as we take a look here, I have two different folders that I've set up. This folder right here is my media folder on my server, and you can see it's a share called Ignite1/media folder. And all this is a Windows server with a share. That share is being monitored in real time by PeerGFS, and it's giving me the ability to tie all of these files as they exist directly up into Blob, up into Azure. So as I take a look at some of these pictures that may be uploaded, so let's say I have, I don't know, this picture here. Oh, there's our guy. Right, maybe I have this picture here. Oh, here's another picture, right? So this is a picture maybe somebody took and had tweeted and had backed up to our server, and we now at this point, we want to identify this guy. So easily enough, what I can do here is as this data, and I'm going to copy this data by hand, just so that you can see what's going on. But as this data gets copied up, and I'll see if I'm quick enough here, what you'll notice in the background is PeerGFS actually notices that file get copied, right? So we'll see that file get added. We can see that being added directly up in Azure now. The other thing I want to show you here is if we were to go into the Azure Explorer. This has nothing to do with Peer. This is just an application that gives us the ability to see the objects as they exist inside our storage container. And in here, if I were to refresh this, we would notice that these objects have showed up. So those files have already showed up here. So in real time, it's getting replicated up. Now, the other thing is right now, my phone is going crazy because we've found Andrew at this event. So if I come back to my Azure function, in this function, I actually have a trigger that's watching for uploads of files to Blob. When it sees the right type of file, it actually processes it and looks for files that match our shady character here. So as we take a look here, I can actually see below it says Andrew Chen was found in this particular image. And it says there's a 72% chance that that's Andrew Chen. There's a lot of really crazy stuff. If any of you have ever seen, you know, like Andrew said, all of your sci-fi movies with, if we wanted to know whether he was happy or not, if we wanted to know whether he had grown a beard since the last time we took a picture, Azure can do all of that sort of stuff. And in real time, with PeerGFS, I'm giving you the ability to engage that. Now, like I said, if we come back to the GDPR issue, How would I then search the corpus of data that's been uploaded and then find this particular user so that I could remove them? So I could easily do that through here. If I were to just type Andrew's name in here and click search, what we're doing is we've put together this very beautiful page you can see. But what this page is doing is it's very quick. It took about 10 minutes for us to cobble this together. And it will drill through all of the storage area, all of the blobs we have, and finds every instance of a particular file, picture, Word document, any place in a WAV file that he was mentioned. We see all of that information, and straight from here we could go to those objects and remove them. So with that, that's the end of the demonstration. So thank you, Andrew.
Yeah, Duane. Thank you very much, Duane.